You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 102 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me, as always, is my podcast partner in crime, writer, blogger, author, TV personality, and apparently troll, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hey, Dave. I'm not from under my bridge.
I like your Matt Lowe response. Hey. What I'm referring to is I guess you got an email or a DM or something from someone who didn't like what you had to say about their particular favorite piece of government and called you a troll.
Yes, I'd love to take the opportunity to expound on that because it was actually one of the few opportunities that I had to punch someone in the mouth about an out of context, taking something out of context because they were referring to my article. So basically, I think it's big league politics or something like that. I don't know. Somebody linked my All on Georgia article about Kevin Cook jumping in the 14th and took the quote that he had said in his press release that I had put in the article and basically rearranged the word order. So he was saying that, and I'm sure we talked about it on the show, but he was talking about how socialism isn't the greatest threat. It's the slow erosions by both parties. Well, they took it and he said that socialism wasn't a threat at all, when he said it wasn't the greatest threat. So anyway, I took it as an opportunity to be like, hey, that's not what I said. And I explained that, and someone called me a troll for saying that that's not what the article said. And I'm like, okay, well, I know because I wrote the article, so you're an idiot, but whatever.
Okay, first of all, a troll is someone who says stuff to get a rise out of somebody else. Right. Looking at you, Matthew. And as funny as he is online and stuff like that, but he will, point out stuff for the reaction. And it's amusing, and it's not his true personality isn't to be a contrarian, but that's what an internet troll is. And everybody does it from time to time. You've actually called out your trolls before. Right. I've tried to be nice. Go get them, boys. And I've been a troll going after the mayor of Savannah. Well, I guess I'm not going to Savannah the first 6 months of this year. Hey, where do we want to go, this spring? Well, it's not going to be Savannah. Although I can always say I'm not that Dave Roberts.
That's not me.
Wasn't me. But I saw you. Wasn't me. I call that the Shaggy defense.
Huh. That's very early 2000s of you.
Turd. On a less than amusing subject, last week we got the news that Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter, and as well as some other passengers, died in a fiery helicopter crash.
It was really sad when I heard it. I'm not even a sports person, and it was sad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, beyond anything else, a man and his daughter, as well as several other people, died in a fiery crash. Of course it's sad.
Well, and he was obviously somebody who was constantly in appearances, not just sports things, but appearances when I was growing up and in middle school and high school and things. Everyone I knew liked him as an athlete and a human from what they knew of him. And it's sad. It was also one of those things too where I saw a graphic on Instagram that he passed away, and I immediately was like, well, I don't even know if this is true, because how many times do we get told that athletes or celebrities die, and then you Google it and it's like, it's a hoax again. So, but then I Googled it and it really was true, which made it even worse. But apparently TMZ broke the story before the authorities could notify the families, which is terrible.
You know, as the only journalist on this show, at what point is decency more important than getting the scoop?
There isn't one.
I mean, there's...
It's like the people who post pictures of fatal crashes on Facebook, like as they're driving by.
Yeah, there's and you know, I'm trying to tread the line between being entertaining and being serious, which I don't do very well because I'm very seldomly serious. There were very real people on that helicopter, and not limited to, you know, Kobe. I'm not saying Kobe wasn't and I'm using, you know, his first name like we were buddies. Not a real person, but that there's a process to go through to notify people. And I mean, nobody would like to hear on Facebook that their loved one died. Plus the questions, you know, I knew, you know, my so-and-so was going to be on a helicopter out of LAX. Was he or she on that? And I hate to put the government up as an example for anything, but when there's a mass shooting, there's a huge reluctance to release that information until the families are notified personally. And I know it's a private hell for everybody else who could have a loved one involved. But I you know, I thought that was
the right thing to do.
I thought it was classless to do that.
Yeah.
That you and I knew within minutes of the crash.
Yeah. It's not necessary. And, you know, I'm sure that it's just like everywhere else where we see that there's, you know, a wreck on the news. And if he had taken a helicopter and they knew that they were in a helicopter, I'm sure that their minds would go crazy and wonder. But that's just part of the process. Like, it's just part of the process. And it wasn't even, there's no excuse because they're supposed to be a seasoned entity, but they didn't ask me. And, you know, it's like, it was very TMZ of them.
It was. I happen to be of the opinion that life and death transcend that sort of stuff. That when we're talking about life and death and we're talking about people's loved ones, just take a beat. It's going to be within minutes that we find out who was on it. You know, give people the opportunity. Now, how horrible it would have been if they got the tail number wrong, if it was the wrong helicopter.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody on the helicopter lands safely in Sacramento or wherever the hell they were going, and they get off the plane to find out, or get off the helicopter, find out, you know, they're supposed to be dead, and they've got to call all their loved ones at once to say, no, this was a mistake. I don't know, man. I don't know. Celebrity deaths seem to be handled as if they're not people.
Yeah. For briefly. And then it's the opposite. Then it's their, you know, the king and queens.
Right. And I can't speak to him as a person because I didn't know him.
Right.
The people that, you know, we lost, you know, I mentioned Neil Peart a couple weeks ago. I think closing out our fun episode of 100, but, you know, I didn't know him as a person either. I only knew the author and the lyricist and the percussionist, and that's all I could speak to is that, you know, the world of music lost a a very talented person, and the world of sports lost a very talented person. But they did sort of just ignore, what was it, 48 hours that you assumed that Kobe was flying the helicopter by himself because there was no mention of the other passengers?
I don't know. I don't like the extreme, the pendulum swing of people being like, well, you're not this upset when people in our military die or whatever the case may be. Like when they're I'm just somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Well, I don't like virtue signaling on either end of the pendulum.
Right. It's sad that somebody died. It's sad that 9 people died, right? 9? 8?
I don't know.
I don't even know now because the number did change a good bit. But it's sad that all those people died. Like, if a helicopter went down on 400, I would be like, that's really sad. Like, it's always sad. I don't understand.
Well, the Air Force communications plane that went down over Afghanistan is tragic also. It does not make the Kobe crash any more or less tragic or make theirs any more or less tragic. I think we have the bandwidth to mourn, especially for those of us who don't know them personally, to mourn them equally and say both things are tragedies. Obviously, if you're a loved one of the other passengers on that helicopter, for the first couple of days, you probably felt a little alone, like no one really gave a damn.
Right.
But we do live in a celebrity culture where we feel like we know these people. And I'm not knocking any of them. It just, we feel like we know these people from the exposure that we have, from watching TMZ, from, I'm going to say, reading articles and things like that. Especially Twitter, I think the social media gives us a feeling that we know these, we have an intimate feeling of how we know these people, and we don't. We have no idea the pain that their families are going through, unless you've been through it yourself. And I'm sure the outpouring of support is wonderful.
But it doesn't fix anything for them, just like it doesn't fix anything when someone supports you when someone close to you dies.
Well, and I tell people, especially in that situation, and I preface what I'm going to say is, I'm going to tell you the most useless thing possible. If there's anything I can do, let me know. Which is both heartfelt, because honest to God, if there's anything I can do, I'd love to help. And 2, I know there's nothing I can do because I'm not magic. It's a loss for words in a void where you feel like you need to say something. There's just nothing. There's nothing that you can do to help them. That I found anyway. If anybody has the magic formula, let me know. And I know the magic formula is probably MDMA or something. That's a story we're not going to cover, where MDMA is being used for PTSD.
Oh, we're not? Okay, well, maybe next week, because next week.
Next week, we'll both take some MDMA and do the show and see if it helps.
No, we won't. And these are individual opinions. Those are Dave's. When the ones he says are his, and the ones I say are mine, and not those of All on Georgia, and not each other's, not anyone who's not here, not anyone you can't hear. Just each individual person. Mine go with my voice. Dave's go with his voice.
This show is brought to you by the letters MD and MA. Not to make light of the previous subject, but that's kind of what we do, or what I do here.
We had to go off a tangent somewhere to bridge to the next set of topics, because you either start with death and work your way back up the mountain to cheerfulness, or you start with cheerfulness and end the show with death and send everyone on the week. And
we have done both ways.
Yes. Sometimes I wish that there could just be the sound when the record is what is it called when they're you smear the record, make that warping noise.
When you scratch the record, or when it's at the very end, you just hear the end where the needle is going onto the paper.
Well, that paper one would be good for the end of the show when we end on death. But when we're trying to like transition and neither one of us are qualified to be actually transitioning to another topic, it'd be nice if they could just.
I think it was Casey Kasem, who was doing one of those shows. He used to do a nationwide show, and he would do dedications. And he had to go from like a dead dog to congratulations on getting married, and he just goes off on the technician in the booth. And this is, it's just on tape. It never made air. It was like, how do I go from a dead dog to congratulations or a happy birthday? You need to put these things in. You need to group these things. So if Casey Kasem can't make the transition, I certainly can't. Anyway, Columbus is spending $7 million to save $57,000 each year. So, editorially, they're also liars.
That's my opinion, because I saw it. So I went to Columbus last week. I was asked to come over to cover a land purchase that they had approved. And it was a nice change of scenery for, a little bit of time. And it's always nice to see how other governments do things and to see that they literally are all the same in the fact that they're dysfunctional and can't do anything right. But so Columbus is the second largest city in Georgia. And, well, first of all, did you see the hype video, Dave?
No.
You didn't? Okay. Let me tell you about this.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a hype video. Like, I got to the meeting early because I wasn't sure if where I was going and how crowded it was going to be or whatever. So I got there pretty early, and there's just a lot of people talking. And when they try to get everyone to take their seats so that they can start the council meeting, they start playing this game show like music, and the TVs light up with all these colors, which they have a lot of TVs in this massive council chamber. And they flash the council, and they're like, welcome to the Columbus Consolidated Government Council meeting. Here's your mayor, Skip Henderson. And it shows his face, and he's like smiling and waving at the crowd. And then they're like, council member or from ward number 1. And they go through everyone. And then the city clerk and the city attorney and the city manager. And it's like, it's ridiculous. I feel like I was on a stupid game show, first of all. And then I'm like, of course, I'm like, I wonder who paid for this and how much it costs, because it's not even that good, but it's still terrible. So that's how it started. Not to mention that I'd done my research before, so I knew they were liars before, but that's how it started. So then they go into this whole presentation about how great they're doing and how efficient they are. Mind you, the government complex is not up to code. They've had to shut down like 3 pools across the city because they're not up to code and they're not safe for people to use. They've not done maintenance on their infrastructure anywhere in the city and have not used SPLOST and lost money for what they said they were going to use it for. So it's just a mess across the board. And the whole presentation they were making was that they're going to move their each county, which they're a consolidated government, so it's a city, but it has to house their public health department to provide them a place to do that. And they've been doing that in this one building that they all lease together for the last 25 years. And the rent has never gone up for any of these places, but they were kind of ahead of the curve 25 years ago when they consolidated all their services into one mega building. They put like WIC, DFACS, public health, just any type of government service in this tower building that not far from a bus stop, so anyone could get there on public transportation, and everything's in the same spot. There's a pharmacy in there, there's medical providers, just everything. Well, the rent never went up in 25 years, and this year it was set to go up $57,000 a year on like a $350,000 lease. So a lot, but when you think about the fact, when I lived in an apartment in Atlanta, my rent went up every year. So anyway, they don't want to pay the $57,000 a month or a year in rent. So they decide they're going to buy a $2.5 million building that's 45 years old and renovate it for $2.5 million. And so they approved that in November and then decided that that wasn't enough money. They wouldn't be able to renovate the building for that much. So they needed another $2 million. So they're spending $7 million to buy a building, take that building off the tax digest, and then that will save them $57,000 a year. And my favorite thing about this is that they said that they also, like, the way that it's set up, it's complicated, but the way that it's set up is that the tenants in the building they're in now pay part of the property taxes, like through a pass-through. It's passed off to them. Well, they're saying, the city was saying that it would cost them $60,000 in property taxes to continue staying there a year. Well, guess how much money they're going to lose each year by buying this building and taking it off the tax rolls?
How much?
$60,000.
Well,
so it's literally a wash on that part.
Well, $57,000 divided into $7 million is 122.8 years. It's going to take them a century and a quarter to make up the difference. But it's all taxpayer funds, so it doesn't matter. Yeah,
and I think the most entertaining part of it was they had, side by side comparisons of numbers, and in the column for owning, they said that it was going to be this $7 million basically flat rate. For leasing, not only did they include like a 20-year projection of how much it would cost, they included what they've spent for the last 25 years. So they're using 45 years for leasing and 20 years from next year for owning. And I'm like, that is truly government math.
Oh, sure it is. Well, they start with the conclusion and work their way back to the problem. Now, Columbus. Columbus. For those who never spent any time there, if you're looking for a stripper, a tattoo, or a hooker, Victory Drive is the place to go. I was never a huge fan of Columbus, but I know it's a giant area, and they got a huge windfall when the Army moved armor school down to Fort Benning, bringing in tons of population. So they're just trying to figure out how to spend this money instead of actually reduce the tax burden on the individual homeowners. There's a lot of inside baseball when it comes to Columbus being an army town. Mm-hmm. The relationship between the federal and city governments, the economy is much at the whim of the DOD. If tomorrow Trump wakes up and tweets, you know what, I think we're going to pull infantry school and armor school out of Benning and move it to, I don't know, Fort Huachuca, Kansas, that economy would collapse. And when they get a windfall, like we're going to move armor school down there, they're stumbling for a way to spend all that money. I guess they found it.
Well, and that's another thing is they got so creative. I loved this. So they got really creative with money and were pulling it from every which direction because, when you say it's going to cost $4.5 million and you come back needing another $2.5 million, you got to answer for that. But they found $1.25 million because they refinanced the bonds that they currently have. And so they refinanced at a lower rate, meaning that they have less they have to pay back, and ended up saving $1.25 million on the debt service on those bonds. And they literally stood up there and said, well, we budgeted that money, and so we're just going to earmark it for this. I don't understand. Like, when
Okay, I have a genuine question for you, and I don't know the answer.
Okay.
When they refinance bonds, and they say they save money, if you listen to commercials, say you can refinance your mortgage, and it will save you $200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you go from a 20-year back to a 30-year, it doesn't actually save you any money. It costs you money in the long run. But they like to say you're saving $200 per month. And if you amortize the entire 30 years, of course you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how government's doing the math when they're saying saving, or is it overall the life of the bond?
It really is over the life of the bond, and it really is that is correct from what I've seen. I mean, I can't speak specifically to Columbus because I haven't reviewed their contracts, but that is what I've seen from other cities when they do that, and this is a pretty common practice to refinance the bond at a lower rate. But most places just say, "Great, we are going to pay it off faster at a lower rate, so we're going to save money," and then they just don't do anything else. They don't say, "Well, we already budgeted $1.25 million, so we're going to put that towards something else because, like, take on debt somewhere else so that," because it's not money you actually have. It's money that you're generating. Like, it's not in your bank account. Savings aren't in your bank account.
Yeah, well, it's forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah, God forbid they actually respect the taxpayer.
Right. Or, yeah. And that's what I said. I said the better story here would have been, hey, we saved $1.25 million on our bonds, and we're going to have our debt service. We're going to retire our debt earlier. And we went to the landlord and worked out an agreement and got, $10,000 knocked off the lease each year. Like, that would be a story. A good story. But instead, you're spending $7 million to save $57,000.
They have a really serious addiction to cash.
Yeah.
So we have 30 troopers fired for cheating in trooper school exam. A wide-sweeping internal investigation was prompted by a tip from a woman formerly involved with one of the fired troopers. She alleged every cadet in the 106th Georgia State Patrol Trooper class had cheated on the speed detection exam.
So this story came out on Wednesday, and I was with my hairdresser, and I was like, "Did you hear the story that's going on?" She's like, "No. Like, how'd they find out they cheated? Did they all get the same score or something?" Because the article that came out first said that it started a few days after the test was taken or scored, and that obviously 30 of them were fired. And I was like, no, I bet you it was like some ex-wife or ex-girlfriend that was pissed off and reported them. And the AJC reported on Wednesday afternoon that the tip came from a woman formerly involved with one of the fired troopers, and she alleged that every cadet in the 106th Georgia State Patrol Trooper class had cheated on speed detection exams. Nothing like a woman scorned.
Shut your mouth. I'm not supporting. I want to let you know, we here at the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast do not support cheating on exams. But if you do, shut up. Nobody hates the guy who goes home from a trip and tells his girl about how everybody else was acting on the trip. Shut up. Just shut up. If no one's supposed to know, that means no one. Not your girlfriend, not your piece of ass, not your wife, not your boyfriend, not your parents. No one. None. Zero. None. Shut up. I mean, that one guy should be fired and have his ass whooped by the other 29. And how tough is a speed detection exam?
I don't know. But they were supposedly talking throughout the exam. Had a text message group, I guess, going on. And, well, first of all, there were 33 people in the class. Like, these classes aren't that big. They start with like 60 and people drop out, sometimes more than that, but people drop out, don't pass, don't make it, whatever. But one resigned, one was previously dismissed for something else, and one was on military leave. So all 30 of the remaining were fired. And it said that the article said that they'd written 133 speeding tickets since they graduated. So all those are null and void. And 30 troopers is a big hit to the state patrol.
How would you like to be the one that's on military leave?
Go back in there.
Show back up from Afghanistan, and they're like, "You're out, bro."
Yeah. Oh, hopefully he probably knows now, but God, that sucks.
Got a Dear John from the state of Georgia while he's deployed.
Yeah. So, but they don't usually send more than one trooper to a post, or certainly not more than two. It just depends on the size of the class. But I mean, all Georgia State Patrol is still understaffed, so this is definitely. I just wonder how this all went down. Like, did they call them to Atlanta for a meeting? Did they have their supervisors just can them? Like, how did this all? I really want more information.
I could hear them meeting, like, get called in to, the captain's office. Like, look, bro, we all cheated on that exam, but you get ratted out. You got to go. Again, these are our opinions, not necessarily those of All in Georgia, or any not on Georgia, All in Georgia reporter not on the show.
I mean, you agree that they should have been fired, right?
Oh, sure, of course. You cheated on an exam.
Well, not just an exam, like the exit exam. Like, it wasn't like you cheated on a quiz and it was throughout the thing, but you had everything else going on. Like, this was like it.
And even that, I don't care. If your job is to display integrity, and the state is going to ask you to be a professional witness for the prosecution, you need to be above reproach. I mean, I don't care if you copied the date for the exam off somebody else's paper. That's just not to be done. But yeah, and if your job is to catch speeders and generate revenue, and this is the exam you cheated on, yeah, you need to go.
Well, and there's imagine the scandal that because once, let's see, however she made her complaint, if she put it in writing, if she contacted them and they started an investigation and didn't fire anybody, can you imagine the headlines that a whistleblower, for all intents and purposes, like, went and told them about this and they turned a blind, like, it would totally compromise the integrity of everyone.
Pillowgate 2020.
They would keep doing it. Right.
Pillowgate 2020. Whispers in the night. Yeah, I mean, this had to be done. I mean, absolutely, the blood had to be let on this. I'm making jokes about the means that it came out, but absolutely. Also, you need to be fairly cognizant of who you wrong if they have dirt on you.
So you're saying that if someone has dirt on you, you should just stick it out?
At least make sure the breakup's good. certainly not cheat. If someone knows where the bodies are buried, you don't tempt them. So anyway, we have a jungle primary scheduled for November in the Georgia Senate race, that the seat that Kelly Loeffler is currently holding down. She was appointed by Governor Kemp and took office January 1 or 2, beginning of the year. And there's a law proposed to change this primary into a traditional election.
Gas up that bleep button, Eric. This is some right here. You don't change the law in an election year.
The primary would be in May. In May. We're going to change the rules.
With David Perdue's.
Well, no, I said would be. David Perdue's, is in May, and he is already, gearing up for a traditional primary in May and a race in November.
But this has been the law for forever.
Right.
Like, you don't... Can you imagine if the Democrats did this when they didn't, because they didn't want to lose their seat? Like, this is absolutely 1,000,000% why our founders opposed political parties and said that we shouldn't do this. That we shouldn't congregate, and you lose all semblance of conscience and doing what's right out of fear of losing. Like, if the Democrats try to change the law because they were worried about losing, Republicans would blister their asses.
Of course. Now look, if the rules change, you change them going forward. That an appointee that comes in, you'd have to pick an arbitrary number at the beginning of the year, of an election year, will have to face a primary. Well, that's going forward, and not that I would necessarily support it or not. It's just at least that's going forward. We're changing the rules mid-game.
Yeah, change it now, but say it doesn't take effect until the next time.
Right. It's sort of like if you ever played a game with a 5-year-old, like whoa, no, that doesn't count. This is a do-over. And the team politics, the tribal politics folks are like, oh, I think this is a good thing because Doug Collins is just who I know is your favorite Republican. Is throwing a monkey wrench into things, and he has to be stopped.
Well, do you really think that's what it is? Because here's the reason I ask. Because Kemp appointed Loeffler, and Ralston had Doug Collins be the pastor of the day in the Georgia House on Monday. They're all buddies. And I don't know. Who benefits from a shorter primary? I feel like somebody who's a sitting congressman, don't you? Not a sitting senator. I mean,
no, she would, but that's not what this is about. This is about keeping the R in November, regardless of what happens in the primary. It's maintaining the R.
Sure, that's true.
They don't care if Satan himself runs and wins the primary as long as he has an R after his name. And we know based on the top of the ticket that most likely the R is going to win. Whoever it is. However, if you split it up between two R's and a D, the R is going to be split, and the D will have a shot.
Yeah.
And I've already heard the hyperbole of this is the way Stacey Abrams will take the seat. This is the way Stacey Abrams will take the seat. And it's entirely possible. But I guess if no one receives 50%, the runoff would be held next January.
No. Well, it depends. I guess it would be January, yeah.
And of course, the runoff almost always favors the opponent. In this case, I don't know if that's how it would break down or not, but certainly in a runoff in a totally non-election month where there's one election, the ground game will be everything. And after the fever pitch that this election is becoming, I don't know that's going to be a great thing. I mean, it's not going to be a great thing. I don't think there's going to be a huge participation once the relief of the 2020 election is over.
Well, can we talk about the dumbass comments that were made during the subcommittee hearing?
Please do.
Shaw Blackman from the Warner Robins, Macon, Bibb County, Metropolis, whatever. He said that getting rid of the jungle primary would protect the two-party system in Georgia. And he said, I quote, "It benefits the party process, which is an integral part of our elections process." You dumb. It is not. It is not.
In fact, we were cautioned against a party system.
Thank you.
I mean, by people that we all generally agree were pretty damn smart. It protects the two-party system. That is everything that's wrong with the two-party system. And we've talked ad nauseum about the ballot access problems of having a third party, especially in Georgia. Is he's just coming right out and saying it. Screw everybody else. Because, it's not just a D that can slip into a jungle primary. It's also an L or an I. So say you got a libertarian in there, they might very well pull enough to slip into the runoff.
Well, and that's why third parties like special elections, even though they hate, that when you have to hurry and raise money, obviously that favors the political parties that are in power, but libertarians and other candidates and third parties have a better shot if they, run in special elections because there's so many people. But how can you sit there and all of them say, well, we're not against ballot access. Like, we want everyone to have a voice. We want everyone to have a vote. And then sit there and say that two parties are what make the process, make our election process run, basically. No, that's not true at all. That's like the actual opposite of what is happening. The two-party systems are making sure that we're constantly deadlocked, which, yeah, we joke about deadlock, gridlock being a good thing, but it's not in reality because government doesn't work.
Well, and there's a very large portion of the electorate that don't feel like they have a voice. They say, well, the Democrat doesn't speak for me, and neither does the Republican. So what am I supposed to do? Is everybody's getting up into their teams, and how to say this gently? How did Carlin put it? Think about how stupid the average person is, and then realize half the population is dumber than that guy. So when you whip people up and get them into teams, not much different from sports. I mean, you see people in football games square off and want to fight each other. Instead of meeting in the arena of ideas, we get teamed up and start pointing fingers and yelling at each other and calling each other names. That benefits nobody but the two party. Hell, it's why I was booted from the Paulding County Republican Facebook page, is because I can admit that, somebody I voted for has not lived up to my expectations, and here's what I think is wrong with them. There are things I like about Reagan. There are some things I really don't like about Reagan. We can go, I have the same feeling about Nixon. Nixon did some stuff that was really, really good, and some stuff that wasn't so good. But when you get locked up into these trenches and all you're doing is just, lobbing volleys of mortar shells back at each other, you lose the argument, and the quintessential argument between left and right is supposed to be the size and scope of government.
Right. It's just disappointing. The timing's disappointing. The way they're doing it's disappointing. Just all of it. I hate it. They make it so easy to hate them.
And look, I think Loeffler, it would be really difficult to beat in traditional primary, because she can outspend anybody. I mean, I think her family wealth rivals that of Trump. I mean, they could drop whatever they really wanted to on this race. Money,
they probably will.
And money that Doug Collins could not possibly raise. So I don't. If you want to get rid of the jungle primary, fine. Like we said, I changing the rules mid-game. I mean, it's like coming out at halftime going, hey, listen, we may lose this thing, so we want field goals to count for 7 points. Because that's all we can score. And changing the rules right at halftime and going out and playing the rest of the game. That's just, it's a horrible idea. I don't know that it'll actually get a vote. And I also heard that Kemp will veto it anyway.
Which is hilarious. Like, that's just, like, as enraging as the whole thing is, that's hilarious because, I don't know, it's just, the system's so up. I just can't even.
I love it. It's you this week, not me.
Anyway.
It's all you. You're the one who has to face Eric. So, bipartisan bill to end NSA surveillance programs exposed by Snowden.
So this is one of those where I saw the headline, I was like, no, really? Someone did this? Didn't it surprise you a little bit? Like, you don't usually see these types of things.
I don't.
Limit government.
Yeah, I mean, the saying bipartisan doesn't mean that it necessarily has a chance of passing, because there's nothing the government likes more than power, money, taxes. But the Safeguarding Americans Private Records Act would narrow Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which provided the National Security Agency and sister intelligence agencies sweeping information gathering authorities following the terrorist attacks of September 11th. According to lawmakers, the bill would end phone surveillance program that would ensnare Americans' phone records and prohibit warrantless collection of location data. The bill would reform the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, adding transparency to the secretive court process that decides whether to surveil individuals. Look,
you go first.
That's what it's look. I have no problem with taking information from international sources. That's what the NSA is supposed to do. That's what the CIA does. That's what the other intelligence agencies do, is they surveil foreign targets. There's no warrant requirement to surveil foreign targets. The biggest problem I had with Snowden is when he started exposing foreign surveillance programs. But when the government was taking metadata from Americans' phones and taking pieces from domestic conversations, that's a problem. That's a J. Edgar Hoover in a Teddy-sized problem. Sorry.
No, I mean, obviously, I feel like almost everybody, I know there's people who are okay with it, but almost everybody's on board with the phone records and the collection of the data. But the secretive court process is, that's a huge part in my opinion. Like, I understand that there's going to be a time for those types of things, but they should have to really work for it, and they don't have to right now, and we have no idea what they're doing behind those closed doors. And so to me, that's like one of the most important components of the bill.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that the FISA court has flimsy oversight. It's statist monitoring statists. The standards are relatively low from everything that's reported to get authorization to listen to. And again, these are U.S. citizens who have a Fourth Amendment, or we used to have a Fourth Amendment. And we were supposed to be secure in our papers, in our persons. And electronic data is the modern version of being secure in your papers. And does that mean law enforcement and the agencies have to work a little harder? Yes. It means the standard is higher. And you don't get to just say, I'm keeping you safe, shut up. And I knew in the 90s that we had technology that would key in on certain keywords. That the NSA had technology, particularly with the satellites, with international calls, that if you said certain more things like jihad or certain keywords, that would go ahead and start recording and then would bring it up to a case officer that would go and listen to conversations and see, and then start looking into people on international calls. That was well known within the community 20 some odd years ago, that they had this technology to do that, but it was narrow in scope, and that the NSA's doctrine was to focus on international conversations, and that because it's international, you don't necessarily have the right to privacy because it's going to a foreign country.
Okay.
I don't know if the theory is correct. It's the same theory that you don't have a right
Sure.
against search and seizure when you come back into the country.
That's right.
So
That's right.
if we apply that standard to communications, the fact that it's going to a foreign country and we're using satellites, that the NSA was able to listen in on stuff like that, and the fact that it was only triggered when certain keywords were used, is a much higher standard than what they're using now, which is, hey, Your Honor, we're kind of curious about this dude.
Right. Behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors with no repercussions if you're wrong. So if you go and you start pulling the data from this guy and find out, oh, well, he's not really breaking the law. Okay, our bad. And J. Edgar Hoover was known for doing this, was known for tapping phones. Not the least of which was Martin Luther King Jr., who has had thousands of hours of recordings on for tapping his hotel phones because he's suspected of being a communist. So it's not a new abuse. It's just
Right.
It's. I say it's not new. I mean, it is within the last 100 years. So I guess we're going to agree on this one. Bad. FISA court, bad.
Yes, Eric, you can do that little record thing with the silence on the paper.
Closing thoughts, Jessica.
Did you see that there's a bill in Vermont? You can guess the political party. They want to put emojis on license plates.
I did because you sent it to me.
You're not very good at this.
No, Jessica, tell me more.
They want to put emojis on license plates in Vermont, Dave. Like, what do you want me to say?
Now
This is going to create a problem because what are they going to? I mean, what if they're only going to allow you to choose from 6? So what are you going to get? Like a white woman, a white man, a medium shade peach man, and then a black man and a black. I mean, there's too many. No, emojis don't belong on license plates.
How do you? Okay, how do you call this in? If you're law enforcement, We've got 7L, OK sign, finger pointing at the OK sign, 4, letter U. I mean, how do you... I hate license plates anyway, because we shouldn't have to drive around with, identify ourselves. I think it's even dumber to pay extra to get something custom on it, but this is stupid. I mean...
Well, it sounds like a logistical nightmare, too, what if you get the wrong emoji?
What if you describe it wrong? Okay, we've got a brownish guy smiling and a yellow...
He has 2 hands next to his face.
Yes.
What's he doing?
Yeah, I noticed they didn't use my favorite emojis, so... Roger that. We've got a poop emoji for you.
It's terrible. And, they're going to have to update the license plate scanner software.
And not just that, you're going to have some older trooper that's like, is that fudge pudding? No, Sergeant. That's poop.
You're not supposed to talk during my closing thought time. It's your turn. Move on to your topic. We're done. We're done.
So Connie's Bank is doing a food drive for Helping Hands, and so I went over to the Walmarts and I filled the grocery cart full of stuff, and I went to the checkout, and it was $35. How in the hell is anybody hungry in this country when cans of vegetables were 50 cents a piece? The case of ramen, 12 ramen were $2. How in the hell? Why do I keep being told that I have to pay for students' lunches and to pay for the cafeterias to be open during summer for students because their parents just can't figure out how to feed them, when I picked up enough food to keep a fat person fed for a month with $30? How in the hell is feeding people a problem in this country?
I don't know, Dave.
Well, I don't know, Dave. I'm not going to talk during your final thought because I'm not an asshole. So, if you like what you heard, like us and share us on social media. Rate us on the podcast platform you use to listen to this show. Tell your friends about us, and if you don't like us, tell your enemies about us. Make them listen to us. So, for Jessica Szilagyi...
Like the drum set that a kid gets for Christmas to the family you don't like?
Yes, exactly. So you have to keep listening for 5 or 10 episodes before you get it. For Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric Humby, our editor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.